1993 is almost over, but cool breezes of fall snap, blurry eyes open and alert as the ASA season rounds turn 4. For some, they must establish new turf. Others must now make years of hard work pay off. And for some, destiny may be to become champion. For others, the goal is to repeat that feat. And for some, it is to reach way down and rekindle the dreams they had so long ago.
I'd just like to see all or nothing, high or low, just how far this game can go. I'd sure like to feel dreams I chased so long ago, when wasted miles on empty roads.
Madison International Speedway presents the Madison 200. Those dreams from long ago and the future collide today here in the Badger State of Wisconsin for the AC-Delco Series. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Larry Newber. This is the Madison International Speedway in Oregon, Wisconsin. This very peaceful setting around here. Great stock car racing tradition in this state. And today, there's a collision of sorts. This is the final run for the championship in the American Speed Association. Rob Albright is joining me. And Rob, it's getting tense.
It really is. Hey, all of you remote control clickers out there, put those things away, because this will be a 200-lap wind sprint before the final 2 races, a couple of 400-lap marathons. But this is the pivotal race of the points battle for 1993.
There's a battle up front. There's a battle from 4th on back, all of which will develop a little later. But another unusual phenomenon of today's race, this is not a track where the AC-Delco regulars are used to running. They've only been here 3 times in their history.
Some of the drivers have spent a lot of time here. Butch Miller qualified for the pole. He ran a lot here at the early part of this 1993 racing season. But for Johnny Benson Jr., a track with 2 very long straightaways, very tight corners, his first ever appearance, and it showed. He qualified back in the field.
Half-mile racetrack. Rob mentioned about the banking along straightaways. The pit area is actually a quarter-mile racetrack on the inside of this racetrack. Very unusual. With more details on that, here is our Ralph Shaheen.
What is unique about the pit lane here at Madison International Speedway is the fact that it utilizes turns 3 and 4 of the infield quarter-mile oval, which you can see over my shoulder. It's a very tight, congested area. Now, what ASA has decided to do is to keep the pace car out on the racetrack, bunch the field up before they allow the competitors to enter pit lane. That should help ease some of that congestion down in pit lane. Now, that makes it a big advantage for those drivers, because the pace car will actually make a lap and a half before putting the drivers down 1 lap. That gives those drivers the extra time to make some needed adjustments. Take Johnny Benson Jr., for example. He starts 8th here this afternoon. He doesn't know this racetrack real well yet. If he has to make an adjustment to that car or think something or talk it over with his crew chief, they'll have that extra little bit of time while the pace car is circulating to take care of that. And that could make the difference in a finish here this afternoon in the point standings at the end of the year.
We are near the town of Madison, Wisconsin, named after the 4th President of the United States. And we are in the final campaign for the 1993 AC-Delco Challenge Series Championship. 3 drivers are in it for contention for that championship. The 1993 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by the Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. And by Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships. And by Armor All. There is a fountain of youth, and we own the patent. The Madison 200 at the Madison International Speedway. We will go 200 laps today on this half-mile track. That's 100 miles. Now, Ralph Shaheen is down on track side, been asked to throw to Ralph. Let me make it a free throw. That's a hint who he's talking to.
Larry, joining us this afternoon, a very special guest to the American Speed Association, and a real thrill for me, one of my heroes as I was growing up in Northern California, a real sports legend, Mr. Rick Barry, star of the NBA. Rick, how about getting us underway here this afternoon?
It'd be my pleasure. Gentlemen, let's go racing.
Rick, of course, is the 12-time NBA All-Star, now a Hall of Famer in the National Basketball Association. He is serving, as Ralph mentioned, on Brad Loney's crew for today.
It is an absolutely picturesque, picture-perfect day here at Madison. 78 degrees, low humidity, winds a little bit gusty and mostly sunny. That follows a day of wind and rain yesterday on and off.
You know, that graphic says 8 miles per hour on the wind, Ralph, but we were standing out there during our open and it was really blowing much harder than that.
Now, Ralph's going to have to deal with that down on pit road. The track, literally 2 drag strips with some very tight turns, kind of reminiscent of my HO scale slot racing set growing up as a kid. The turns banked at 18 degrees and are 75 feet wide. It's a good 2 to 2.5 groove racetrack.
Yeah, the racetrack also, if you're familiar with stock car track at Martinsville, Virginia, is very reminiscent of that, except the corners are banked significantly more. You're looking at the starting grid of today's Madison 200. We had almost 45 cars attempt to get into this field, but on the pole, a surprise.
The fastest of 45 qualifiers, Butch Miller earns the pole. He was the 87 and 88 ASA champion, and trying to keep the heat turned up under Benson and Hansen, Mike Eddy goes second.
Scott Hansen, with his 3 wins, is armed and ready for an assault in the season championship. He drives the appropriately sponsored Wisconsin Aviation Chevy. And Jeff Neal, his best finish this year, 3rd, came at a track just like this, Calgary.
Jim Weber takes over for car owner Leighton Reese on the ovals. He'll start 5th in car number 6. And on the outside of that 3rd row, a career best qualifying effort for 20-year-old Joe Knott.
Homestader Jay Sauter has been fast enough to win several times this year. He drives the Delco Voyager, Weir's Chevrolet. And Johnny Benson Jr., is he on the brink of his first ever national championship in stock cars?
This young man will gun for $40,000 as Rookie of the Year next season in '94. He's got a good run. He'll start 9th today. That's John Lemke. And on the outside of the 5th row, Madison regular and a former ASA Rookie of the Year, Ken Lund.
Phew, take a breath. Deep field coming up. Row number 6 starting side by side. A couple of ASA veterans now, Tom Jones and Steve Holtzhausen. In row number 7, Tony Raines looking for that next win in his career in car number 25. And on the outside of row 7, the man Harold Fair from Detroit, who's twice finished 2nd in this great series. Inside of row number 8 in the Wins Thunderbird is Gary St. Amand, and moving over to the Carbright Racing Chevrolet is Carl Miscott in the 3rd. 9th row, side by side, cars numbered 91, 19, row of 9s, Tom Harrington and Randy McDonald, the leading rookie. In the 10th row, Dennis Lampman. He has a victory this year, as does Joe Shear at the nearby Milwaukee Mile. In the 11th row, a couple of veteran race drivers from the South who make a lot of headlines, but they're starting back in the 11th row here today, Ken Schrader and Dick Trickle. In row number 12, on the port side, in row number 12 is scheduled to be Dave Watson, and on the starboard side is Todd Forbes, also a previous winner here this year. In row number 13 and 25th and 26th starting positions are Mike Miller and Brad Loney. Remember, Brad has had several very strong races this year, including last week at the Minnesota State Fair. Starting in 27th and 28th is Jay Sommers and Kent Stauffer. In the 15th row, cars numbered 15 and 84, Glenn Allen Jr. and Bob Seneker. Allen Jr. and Seneker each has a win so far this year. In the 31st starting position is Russ Gamester, one of 3 Win oil-sponsored cars. He's from Peru, Indiana, kind of reminiscent of Baraboo, Wisconsin. A little more on that in a minute. And car number 10, Tony Roper. They are followed by the number 2 of Terry Wente and 37 of David Anspaugh. And starting all alone in the 18th row, a late starter here. He has made the overnight journey from the southeast, Richie Bickle, although Bickle's original hometown is Edgerton, Wisconsin. Now we're getting a red flag, a very unusual occurrence, and the radios are abuzz right now, Rob, but still no reason for exactly what that is. Now, Ralph, perhaps you got an update.
Larry, what they're doing is they're cleaning out the front grills of the cars. They've picked up a lot of leaves. Let's face it, we've gotten into the fall time of the year, and when that happens, of course, leaves start blowing around. As you know, there's a lot of trees off the backstretch here. So the crews are coming out, sweeping the leaves off the front of the grills so that we don't overheat our engines. All those cars can get good, clean, cool air in there, and the cars will run properly. We have the same situation you might remember last year at Toledo.
There's Todd Forbes in the Noah Yoder car number 05 from Hicksville, Ohio, right on the border of Indiana in the state of Ohio. A surprise winner a couple of races ago. There's Mike Eddy, Jeff Neal in the Splitfire Thunderbird, that black-yellow trim number 5, looking for win number 1 of this season.
We've got two clusters of points battles. The top three, Johnny Benson, Scott Hansen, and Mike Eddy, all still in a contending position to win a championship. Jay Sauter hoping maybe to move up another spot, and Tony Raines, having sustained 2 blown engines prior to the start of the last 2 races, just hanging on by the skin of his teeth in 5th.
Now, the interesting thing about this particular screen is look at those numbers off on the right. This is 6th through 10th, and you're going to drop all the way down to 13th in the next graphic, but look at how close these drivers are clustered. There are 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and remember, 5th through 10th, which we showed you a little earlier, and to summarize, that's 120 points between 6th position and 13th position. Easily changed.
A very interesting statistic. Let's look at the drivers as they rank in the points battle. Jay Sauter, you can see, with 9 top 10 finishes. You mentioned he's been fast enough to win, but has not yet won this year. Look at all the laps that he's read. Tony Raines just 1 spot back in the points. He's been consistent, hasn't led a lot of laps, but Gary St. Amant, another driver that's been fast. Larry, down in that 8th position. He's led a lot, has yet to win this year.
And he was 25 laps from victory at the Minnesota State Fair just 1 week ago. Now, there is the number 6 that we're used to seeing Leighton Reese behind wheel of, but very familiar name to Wisconsin stock car fans. That's Jim Weber, the 1992 ARTCO champion. This is the Eaton Chevrolet Elko Speedway special. They're promoting a big race that they have coming up just a little later in the year, and there is Joey Knott.
Joe Knott came to the American Speed Association last year with zero stock car racing experience. At 19 years of age, just kind of felt his way through a rookie season, and he really has proven himself to be a contender. Finished 5th on the road course at Topeka just a few weeks ago, and an unbelievable 6th fastest qualifying run. 45 drivers qualified, Larry, in the top 20, separated by only 31/100ths of a second. Another big surprise in the top 10 is this guy right here, John Lemke. He and his wife Michelle, by the way, expecting their first child in November, and he would love to win a race. His goal now is to then campaign next season for Rookie of the Year, just running a handful of races this year.
New colors for Lemke. On the outside there in the number 23 was Kenny Lund, that black car, former Rookie of the Year in the American Speed Association. This is Ken Stauffer. We've kind of kidded him a couple of times this year about having the fastest Thunderbird in ASA, but that's no joke. He really has been.
Absolutely. 6 years in the last 7. He's finished in the top 10 in points. He's never won an ASA race, but he is more excited about the potential for win than ever.
The pace car has ducked into the 1/4 mile oval pit lane. Butch Miller brings the strong field of 35 ASA cars off the number 4 corner, and the Madison 200 is green here in Wisconsin. Butch Miller is going to lead lap number 1. Scott Hansen almost lets the Bronco get away.
Rubbing side by side down the backstretch. Miller almost lost the lead into turn number 1, but the low groove will be fastest early. Expect to see a second groove develop. It's already there. Eddie trying to fend off Scott Hansen for 2nd position.
You'll quickly notice a very interesting nuance of this racetrack. The corners are tight because they're banked. You carry the speed into the turns, but about 2/3 of the way through the corners, it gets very tight. Train wrecks occur as cars bunch together at a high rate of speed just before they make that final arc into the second turn and to the fourth corner.
Their battles back in the pack, but this is the best war. That dice for second position. Scott Hansen, we thought, would be the pole sitter for this race. He was fastest all through practice, but he's got his hand full with one tough cookie. And Mike Eddy, and he's sideways in turn 4.
That is at least the second time, maybe the third time we've seen Hansen in that posture so far in this race. And Todd Forbes, a winner one television race ago, has been the first one to spin out here at Madison International Speedway.
It does not appear, Larry, that he made any wall contact whatsoever. And oftentimes when a driver wins his first race, you see him come back and run really strongly the next race. Todd struggled a bit last weekend at Minnesota. Did not qualify well yesterday, but after earning his first victory at I-70, he now is fighting for credibility.
Here's the best look that we have of this incident. There you see Todd on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, apparently just getting out of control at that point on these corners, Rob, that I was making reference to. About 2/3 of the way through that 180-degree turn you make at the end of each oval track. This track does a really strange thing. It like tightens up, and the radius is definitely decreasing rather than increasing, and it just jams the cars together, and the drivers have to make an abrupt second left turn.
And I'll tell you, Larry, when you're back in the pack early in the going, it's on the gas, on the brake, on the gas, on the brake. Brakes will be a crucial factor here today. Several of the drivers, including Scott Hansen, told me you do not want to have the brakes fail on your race car here, because when you hit the wall at the end of these long straightaways, it's a totaled race car.
Yep, there is no way to downshift, too. These are not road racing cars. I mean, I suppose you could throw it into first gear and destroy your engine.
Actually, they are road racing cars.
Well,
many of these drivers, this is the only one they've got. Super Speedway, short track, road course, it'll do it all.
That's true. Getting ready to go back to green on lap number 6 of 200. Very minor incident involving Ohio's Todd Forbes. Butch Miller brings the field around. He takes back up the point, and there goes the number 53 car of Scott Hansen. He once again tries to challenge the inside of Eddy. Look at Eddy drive into that corner. He tries to hold the line. Track begins to flatten out a little there out of corner number 4. And Eddy loses some ground this lap to Mr. Hansen. First 10 cars at this early stage. Miller, Scott Hansen, Mike Eddy is third. Jeff Neal looking for that first win of the season. He is fourth. Fifth right now is the number 6 car of Jim Weber, driving the car normally piloted by Leighton Reese, but the road racer, speaking about road racers, said, hey, I had to get my vanity out of the way and get my race car to the front. I really appreciate what the Eiten Chevrolet people have done. Johnny Benson is running 6th and challenging. In 7th is Benson. 8th is Jay Sauter. 9th is Lemke, and 10th is Tom Jones.
There's a good pack of cars. Tom Jones runs in 10th position. Steve Holson is there, and Joe Knott, who started 6th. Look at that car push up the bank in turn number 2. He's fallen off the pace and back into 12th position.
There is Steve Holtzhausen. If you've been following ASA for the past couple of seasons in that white, gray, and red trim number 78, you know how great a year he had last year as a rookie. There's John Benson Jr., Mr. Muscle Man. Here is our Superman.
Well, you may wonder why Benson qualified so poorly. I use that word parenthetically because we're expecting to see him start from the pole position. Benson qualified very early yesterday, and the track got faster as the afternoon progressed. That's atypical of qualifying in an ASA race. Usually you want to go out in the early part of the day, but the track got quicker. Benson, unfortunately, had to go out very, very early.
I think that Scott Hansen is really benefiting as we continue to look at Jim Weber in that number 6 Chevy Lumina. He moves to the inside of Jay Sauter. Great performance by Weber. He knows this track well, but on the other hand, so does Jay Sauter.
Coming right behind Sauter is that young Minnesota driver, John Lemke, in car number 24 of the Valvoline Treasure Island Casinos machine. And as we mentioned, Lemke had hoped to run for Rookie of the Year this year, was at the first 4 races, and then pretty much parked the car number 24, now drags it out of mothballs. He wants to make sure it's set to go for 1994 in a chase for Rookie of the Year. And car number 0, Tom Jones, I think he was hard on the brakes right there, Larry. That's why you saw that smoke.
Yeah, it was either brakes or maybe even the body rubbing, because the weight transfers so dramatically when you get on the brakes. Now, Ralph is observing from pit lane. He has a comment about Scott Hansen.
Larry, I had a chance to talk with Scott earlier this morning about the setup for this particular venue and his type of car that he likes to drive in general. He said he likes a car that is very comfortable. He hates to wrestle a car around. In fact, he says he just won't do that. If a car causes him to fight the steering wheel, he will back off his pace until it gets comfortable.
Randy McDonald has spun Ralph. Let's get back to Ralph in just a second on that. Let's see how McDonald plays this. Randy was a candidate for top 5 finish last week at Minnesota. He was involved in an incident on the final lap with Brad Loney. It resulted in a penalty to Randy. He was relegated by a ruling back to 15th, but he was very competitive a week ago. Still got Ralph on deck on that report, but in the meantime, while we're pausing on the racetrack, you can pause at home. We'll be back with more after this. Oregon, Wisconsin for the AC-Delco ASA series. This is the early laps of the 200-lap race here today. Not much change up front. Butch Miller was our fastest qualifier. He remains there, although Scott Hansen is really showing some signs that he would like to take over the lead. Let's see how Hansen can work over Butch Miller. Hansen worked very hard at getting around Mike Eddy on lap number 20, and Hansen darts right down to the inside of the track going into corner number 1. He really got the jump on the edge on Butch Miller that time. They're side by side, door handle to door handle. The white number 50, the white number 53 are challenging for the lead. Mike Eddy lurks behind, coming around to complete lap number 21, and we've had a crash in corner number 4. It's John Lemke. It appeared just to get away from John. I did not see the incident develop. I don't know if he got touched or not, but for John, what a disappointing moment, because this is a track near his home. He had qualified so well, as Rob told you earlier. Very optimistic about his chances for next year, and we believe that that was a pretty solid wall contact, Rob.
John had moved from 9th on the starting grid to 6th or 7th, I believe it was, on the running order in car number 24. I didn't see it happen either. We were watching the battle up front between Hansen and Butch Miller, and John did take a very hard ride. You can see some fire coming out from underneath the hood of that race car. I think it's probably just some oil that's dripped down onto the headers of the race car. There was fire immediately as he hit the wall. There's John. He's out of the car. He's okay, though I'm sure he's going to be bruised and a bit sore when he gets out of bed tomorrow morning. Better lay in an extra supply of aspirin, I think.
Trying to blow the fire out. This isn't a barbecue. You can see John limping just a little bit, waiting for the safety crews to get there. They do, and put out the fire. And John a little stunned, but mostly disappointed. You can see him limping away from the crash site. Now here's another look at it, Rob. Let's see if we can pick up anything. There is
he's right behind
Neil
Jay Sauter.
Benson, and on the high side of the track, you saw him get into the wall very hard.
The left side of the car literally airborne as it hammered the wall on the outside. From that vantage point, it's hard to imagine that he was touched by anybody. He was several car lengths back of Jay Sauter and a few ahead of Jim Weber. So our best guesstimate was the car simply maybe got away from him as he went through turn 3.
All right, we've commented a number of times about how racy Scott Hansen looks today. Ralph was giving us a report on that when we had our last yellow flag. Let's go for it one more time, Ralph.
Larry, the point with Scott Hansen is he likes a car that is very comfortable, not one that he has to fight. Early in the opening laps, he seemed to be fighting to keep the car under control as he was running with the leaders. Once he gets out in front, don't forget, he'll have an opportunity to come back into the pits and adjust that car to soften it up or tighten it up, to do whatever he needs to get it to the exact point that he likes. He is very, very racy at this point, yet he is still fighting the steering wheel. So what happens if he gets that car just where he likes it? Scott Hansen could be blazingly fast here today.
We commented also at the last restart that Hansen appeared to have almost caught Butch Miller sleeping. Look, he feints high. He gives him the old Walter Payton right leg and then darts down to the left with the left leg, if you will, and gets to the inside of Butch.
What you could not see from that vantage point, Larry, as they flashed past the start-finish line, he was literally inches from lifting the tail end of Butch Miller's car number 50 into the air. I really thought, because he got such a great start, that we were going to see a major disaster. And he slipped by just barely on the left-hand side. That's trust between two veterans.
Very interesting story, though. Hansen doesn't appear to be completely comfortable at the setup of that car, but boy, he is standing on the gas. He appears to be the fastest car on the track here in the early stages of the Madison 200. Remember, this is a day that has tremendous ramifications for points. Wisconsin has always been one of America's playgrounds. Lots of lakes around here. The Wisconsin Dells are not too far away, where you can tour the Dells by riding in ducks. Do you know what a duck is, by the way?
Well, I know what I consider a duck to be. They're the ones that show up in the lake out behind my condo.
Well, you're close. This is also the summer home occasionally of the circus at nearby Baraboo. And, of course, Lake Geneva is nearby where they have a lot of wildlife. There are a lot of bunnies at Lake Geneva. But back to the duck story. A duck is a military vehicle that basically is a very large inverted bathtub with wheels. And that's the way that they transported soldiers traditionally from ships to land attacks, if you will.
Well, you sound like you may have had first-hand experience.
No. I didn't live through World War II. I wasn't around yet. But anyway, you can ride the ducks.
You weren't?
No, you can ride the ducks through Wisconsin Dells, and it is very entertaining. And also, the duck drivers, that sounds funny, doesn't it? Anyway, the duck drivers are very daring. You say they have daring duck drivers at the Dells, get it? But anyway, they really are, and it's an exciting vacation stop. Racing electronics, of course, are always a part of every AC-Delco Challenge Series event. Two-way communication equipment is provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of the American Speed Association. For more information, you can write Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road in Charlotte. That's Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte. And the zip code is 28262. 28262.
Well, you talked about daring. I want to ask you fans out there that are watching our broadcast today, have you ever done any bungee jumping? If you have, you're braver than our current points leader, Johnny Benson Jr., last week at Minnesota. A non-televised race, and we're sorry you missed it. It was a fantastic event, about a dozen lead changes among almost that many different drivers.
Rob is really nice to all you guys, isn't he?
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, Johnny Benson started 10th and was told by a crew member that if he won the race, the crew member would bungee jump, and that if Benson didn't win, he would have to bungee jump. Well, the rest is history. He did win that race. However, he said, even if I hadn't, I wasn't going to jump. That scares me.
One lap sign coming up. We're getting ready to go green the next time around. Benson with those 4 victories so far in 1993. He leads this division and wins. Scott Hansen has 3. Mike Eddy has 2. They are the only multiple winners in a season which has seen 9 different winners, near an all-time, or I should say a modern era ASA record. And Benson is the points leader, and he certainly appears to be poised in a slightly better position than he was a year ago. Yeah, I know he didn't have a lead like this then, but he just appears to be in a little more control. The pace car is off the racetrack. Hansen is bringing the field around, and we have a car coming to a stop in corner number 3. Gary St. Amant's car certainly was not ready for the call, and there he is. He appears to still be under power, but just barely. St. Amant is going to go, oh, and Hansen ducks down into the corner. He did not see St. Amant at the first moment that he entered that corner, but he was able to catch him through the corner of his eye at the very last possible second. He avoided a collision, but St. Amant comes to a stop in corner number 4, and unfortunately the man who has been extremely competitive the last 3 races has already lost a lap. Now, while all this was going on, Tony Roper has ducked into the pits at least once, maybe twice, Ralph, and I saw that you were there. I bet you can update us on that situation.
Larry, suffering from a stuck throttle. They've been bringing the car in, trying to fix it. That is one of those things that unfortunately only time will tell if they got it right or not.
There is Tony in the Child's tire machine on the racetrack. Tony, another one of those second-generation drivers. His dad, Dean Roper, still active on the mild dirt tracks of the Midwest of Illinois and Indiana. Excuse me, that's Illinois. The S is silent.
A big disappointment once again for Gary St. Amant, the driver of car number 7. As he sits there, he has now gone 2 laps down. Still no assist to get him back to pit road, but he has been so strong so many times this season. As you mentioned, 2 of the last 3 races, led the Anderson 400 with a dozen laps to go, and was involved in a bumping incident on the racetrack. Just racing contact sent him into the wall and out of contention. And then last weekend at the Minnesota State Fair, had it not been for a couple of late race cautions, Gary, who led near the end, might have had his first victory of this season. Ralph, how about an update on Gary?
Well, let's talk to Bud St. Amant, his father and crew chief. Bud, what did he say?
He said it just quit running there when they getting ready to take the green and started backfiring. So I imagine we got a wiring problem or ignition box.
As he's coming around to come in here now, what is the checklist order that you'll look at as you're trying to find the problem?
Well, we'll just switch boxes and check the wiring on the firewall there. We might have a problem there. We changed headers and got a little bit close to the headers, and we might have a problem there. I don't know.
Gary, in the Winds Spirit Thunderbird, there's a checkered flag. Look at this, Rob. Oh, that is on the push truck. I thought, where in the world did that checkered flag come sprouting out of the left rear fender of Gary Seaman? Gary's best finish this year has been a second, although he was 5th on the final tally at St. Paul at the Minnesota State Fair we referred to a couple times last week.
If you are new to ASA racing this season, Gary had an outstanding 1992 in a car that he and his father prepared themselves in their own shops. Gary finished 7th in the overall point standings, won the race at Cayuga, Canada in the early part of the season, and captured the 5-race series within a series, 5 events up in Canada, and he was the champion of that series.
Also, if you follow these races, you know that each week we make a presentation on behalf of Racing Electronics that the winner receives not only a Uniden Bearcat scanner from Racing Electronics, but also a 1-year Racers Frequency membership. Now, to enter, all you have to do is send your name and address on a postcard to that number and address that we showed you earlier. I'll repeat it one more time verbally, so if you missed it, Racing Electronics. By the way, I'm just about ready to announce this week's winner. We are going back to green, but I'll need to finish this report. That address is box GFS 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte, North Carolina 28262. Back to green. And today's winner of the Unicat Bearcat scanner and 1-year Racers Frequency membership is Paul G. McKinney of Memphis, Tennessee. Congratulations, Paul. Your Racing Electronics scanner is on the way. Updating you on laps completed. 40 are down. One more time. The goal here is 200. First guy to cross the start-finish line right there, that huge checkerboard. After 200 laps, he will be declared the winner. Now, there's Todd Forbes in the black 07. Remember, you saw him spin a little earlier, side by side behind him, filling in the orange and black of Randy McDonald and Russ Gamester. There are your 2 leading rookie contenders of this year. They were racing side by side. Russ found himself out there a little bit in no man's land, I think, on that last turn.
And those 2 drivers only became teammates a couple of races ago as car owner Caroline Wolf, the owner of Randy McDonald's car, joined forces with owner Mac McClellan to form a 3rd Wins Racing team.
Also to update you, as we have a challenge mounting again for the lead. This time Butch Miller wiggles going into corner number 1. He tries to duck to the inside of Scott Hansen, looking for that daylight, but Scott Hansen, the sprinter of the early laps here at Madison, Wisconsin, holds off the number 50 of Butch Miller.
And right behind them, we've had a change in 4th position as Johnny Benson, there he goes into turn number 1, and car number 21 has gotten by Jeff Neal on the low side, and Jay Sauter-Larry is going to follow him through.
And that is 5th place. Those 2 gentlemen right there are trying to decide that right now. On the outside is Neal, on the inside is Sauter. Neal is not that far away himself, even though his home address is not Wisconsin. He probably lives closer to this track than most of the drivers competing here today.
No doubt about it. Jeff Neal may have a bit of a tire problem, I think, on the right front corner of that race car. He cannot keep that split-fire spark plug Thunderbird down at the bottom of the racetrack. These 2 drivers have fallen well behind the lead battle as it goes into turn number 1. They were just exiting the 4th corner.
All right, just to try and keep you updated, we know that a lot of you have a lot of favorites in the race, and certainly you're curious about how the Wisconsin native drivers are doing, the drivers who unoccasionally visit from the southeast. Dick Trickle has improved his position, but has not moved up to a challenging place. He's approximately in, I'd say, 17th or 18th position in the race. Ken Schrader has dropped back. He may be 25th. Bob Seneca is just lolling around in about 27th or 28th, followed closely by Glenn Allen Jr. back up front in the 8th position. There's Harold Fair and Jim Weber.
Harold Fair in the Handiwac Chevrolet, car number 81. Another one of the drivers that's in that heated battle for 6th through 13th in the points as Weber continues to go back in the field very slightly in car number 6. Harold would love to have a birthday present today, the first win in this 1993 racing season.
Harold Fair has had a fairly decent 1993 season. He has had some consistency in finishes, and he's moved comfortably inside the top 10 of the season point standings. Up front, it's really tightened up. There is Hansen from Wisconsin, the number 50 of Butch Miller from Michigan, and the number 88, Mike Eddy from Michigan. Some familiar names, numbers, and sights up front at an ASA race, Wisconsin and Michigan.
If you're a longtime Butch Miller fan, you know that he historically ran the car number 52. Well, at some ASA races, he still wears car number 52. Those events when Ken Schrader isn't there, because at the beginning of the season, Butch Miller was not registered to compete with ASA, so Schrader took the number 52. When Ken isn't at an event, Butch is 52, and then they change that decal. He's 50 here this afternoon. And there are a couple of long-time ASA rivals, Butch Miller and Mike Eddy, right behind, I would say, relative newcomer Scott Hansen, who won the Rookie of the Year title in 1989. Seems like, doesn't it, Larry, that Scott's been around a lot longer than that?
Yeah, it really does. I agree with that. Butch Miller, incidentally, is number 3 on the all-time win list, and Mike Eddy is number 2. Between them, they have won 79 times in ASA competition. 79. That's more than Bob Seneca, but only by 5.
But only by 5.
Bob Seneca's won a lot of these races, hasn't he? All right, now begins to filter out just a little bit. Hansen, he has not given up that lead since he took it, although Miller, at the restart on those cold tires, before his tires heated up, he tried to duplicate the move that Hansen put on him to take the lead. And Eddy seems to have gathered a little bit of steam in the last 5 or 6 green flag laps.
We saw an extremely interesting scene yesterday on pit road after practice and before qualifying. Mike Eddy walked over to Scott Hansen and said, "You look very, very fast. What are you doing out there?" And Hansen very openly shared his strategy. Mike made some changes and out-qualified him. Started second. He's back in that second position right now, but chasing the guy that he got the advice from.
Always been an interesting phenomenon. As Hansen is still fighting and he's still sliding into those corners, he lost a little bit of momentum. That may give Eddy an opportunity to take that long road around the high side of Hansen. Interesting phenomenon of racing, though. It is traditional in racing for crews, especially those ones that travel together for years, to share almost everything with each other, including entire cars, until the green flag drops. Then they share nothing.
Larry, this will get interesting very soon. You can see just going out of frame, there's a whole group of cars, probably 12 or 15 deep, right in front of the leaders. If we stay green for 2 more laps, it's going to get exciting.
Battles throughout the pack for 20th position. There is Ken Schrader in that red, white, and blue number 52. Rob just made reference to that car number 52, by the way. That's 25 spelled backwards. I'm sure that's the number you recognize. The number 9 is Dennis Lampman. He has a victory. The number 84, Bob Seneca. He has a victory this year. The number 15, Glenn Allen Jr. He has a victory this year. So 20th position on back. 3 drivers, each who has rejoiced in the euphoria of victory lane this year. They languish 20th on back.
And they started right together on the racetrack. Way back in the 15th row did Bob Seneca and Glenn Allen Jr. trying to pick their way through traffic. Now move up behind car number 9, Dennis Lampman. Glenn Allen said yesterday after practice and qualifying that the handle simply was not there on that race car. He was so fast in our last televised event at I-70, coming from a lap down to finish 3rd. That's just not worked for him this weekend.
They had a great car at the end of the race. There was no question about that at that I-70 race. And had it not been for an unfortunate circumstance in pit road, although it turned out to be caused by them, they did not have high gear, or it was second gear they didn't have. As there goes Glenn Allen to the inside of the number 84 car, Bob Seneca. Here are the leaders getting into that traffic that Rob was talking about.
And the last time by the start-finish line, Scott Hansen's car number 53 had been literally squeezed right out against the outside retaining wall, crossing the start-finish line. And as a result, Mike Eddy will take the position away. Eddy gets together with car number 48, Joe Knott, and Randy McDonald, who apparently has hit the wall in turn number 2. Eddy is under power, but will give up a lot of positions. And this is what we expected here, Larry. These corners are extremely tight. There's just no margin for error.
Now, I don't know what happened. They were approaching Joe Knott. It almost looked as though, believe it or not, that the Randy McDonald spin up against the wall and the Joe Knott Mike Eddy situation were not related. Now, maybe they are. We'll find out perhaps on this replay. Maybe there is some moisture or something on the track, but McDonald spins up near the outer retaining wall. Joe Knott comes into contact with Mike Eddy, or should we put it the other way around? Let's see what we can figure out here. There's Eddy moving the inside of Joey. Did Joey move down? Did Mike move up? Don't know. There's Hansen hard on the brakes. Look at that nose go down. He makes a hard right-hander turn. See McDonald up along the wall? I don't think they were related.
No, as we just picked up on the 48 and 88 situation, you could see Randy McDonald already spinning up at the top side of the racetrack. Let's take another peek. Mike Eddy tries to go way down on the bottom, simply won't make that car turn like that, not spins, and Randy McDonald's already gone. He won't even come into this frame, but he's at the left of your picture, just out of sight. Mike Eddy, and you know what? That was kind of a brave move right there, because there were at least 8 or 10 cars coming onto the scene as Mike spun back around and into contention.
Now, this could have very significant implications as all the leaders, most of the leaders come into the pits. McDonald having crashed out. Russ Gamester is not really challenging him yet, but he certainly is within striking distance. Now, here was the lead change as the yellow flag flew. Mike Eddy goes to the inside as Eddy and Hansen race back to the start-finish line. And this was a couple of laps ago. That's what it was. This was not after yellow. Obviously, right. Mike lost a lot of track time. He is among the flock of leaders who came into the pits.
And it does not appear, Larry, with so many of the lead lap automobiles taking this opportunity to come on pit road, that Mike Eddy lost a lot. His crew gave him a great pit stop. He has the perfect pit stall as the defending national champion and had no problems getting in and getting out in car number 88.
Ralph introduced to you a very unusual set of circumstances about this pit road before our broadcast began, and we'll follow up on that story in just a bit, but reminding you, it is actually corners 3 and 4 of the quarter mile inside of this half-mile racetrack, and it makes for tight quarters because there are actually too many cars when you start 35. The former White Knight, Dick Trickle, that's what he was called when he was winning nearly hundreds of races every year up here in Wisconsin in the 1970s. Dick Trickle, he was obviously involved in that crash in corner number 1 that involved Randy McDonald and seemingly unrelated Joey Knott and Mike Eddy spinning at the bottom of the track. Eddy had damage to the right front, and Ralph, I think he has gone down a lap. Now, you've been right there on top of the situation. How are you seeing that?
What they're trying to do right now, Larry, is adjust the suspension, the front of the suspension on the car, make adjustments to the toe end, get the car aligned properly as best they can, and get Dick back out into the racetrack.
He had moved as high as 15th and was beginning to show signs that he was ready to rumble on.
Talk about an unfair advantage. This guy has had it this weekend. He won a race here Friday night, and immediately at the conclusion of our race this afternoon, there is another race, the Wisconsin Short Track Championship event, and he's going to go 200 laps in that one as well. Steve Holzhausen started 12th, has now moved up to 3rd, Larry, and over the last 4 races, he's had a pair of 7ths and a 2nd. Compared to 1992, however, when he finished 5th overall and won Rookie of the Year, it's been a tough 1993 racing season. Finds himself 15th in points, but in a contending position this afternoon.
I also suggest that Trickle, surprisingly, is losing his chance to win this race. Obviously, there is serious damage to that car. Dick, with all of his experience in stock cars, is sure to field a very experienced team. They've been working feverishly on that car. They've lost at least 2 laps. The Wisconsin legend, Dick Trickle, the man who has won more than 1,000 stock car races in his career, 95% of them in the state of Wisconsin, sits in the pits, and as we go back to green, another black car limps toward the pits. Guess who this one is? It is Mike Eddy, the man in definite contention for the points championship. We continue on green, and Eddy comes in without any power. 1 lap down. Tremendous implications for the season championship, and Eddy looks like he is headed toward behind the wall.
Unbelievable. Scott Hansen leads the race in car number 53. He is 2nd in points, and points leader Johnny Benson has come from 8th at the start to run in 2nd position, and it looks like the 89 and 90 rookies of the year may be settling it for the championship this afternoon. Ralph, what happened to Mike Eddy's car number 88?
Rob, you can see Mike Eddy is bending down trying to fix the pedals. The brake cylinder came apart. He is trying to go to work with the pedals, see if they could get it fixed.
Well, Terry, when he is spun, and the ironic thing about his spin is that he ends up no more than 15 laps, and we've had cars coming together in the front straightaway. Tom Harrington and Dave Watson. Watson, without any brakes, drifts to the inside of the racetrack. That car is completely disabled, as you can see it. Dave can only steer. He can't stop or start it. We were commenting about Terry Wenny spinning on the backstretch, stopping about 15 feet from his own pit stall, right at the edge of corner number 3 of the inside track. And meanwhile, as the yellow is coming out for that, Watson and the number 91 of Tom Harrington come together.
Let's take a peek at what happened. Now, this is the Terry Wenny situation on the backstretch. Just too many cars fighting for too little real estate, and a couple of cars just slid by. It was Tom Harrington, I believe, and car number 15, Glenn Allen Jr.
It was. Watch for the 91 and the 77. Now, after they avoided Terry Wenny, here's what happened as they came to the front straightaway. See all the cars slowing down, and they come together on the inside of the track. Harrington slides up, bangs in the outside wall, causes some damage to the right front, and Watson also hits the outside fence.
Dave Watson's left front brake area of that race car was aflame momentarily after it came to rest. We talked about the significance of the brakes on this particular racetrack. You go down the main straightaway wide open and just stomp on the brakes, and they get extremely hot. And that was the case for Dave Watson. Looks like his afternoon may be over. And for a 200-lap race, Larry, just a little more than a third of the way into this thing. Whoa.
There is Miss Lisa Dickinson, Miss Wins for the 1994 season, cheering on all of her favorites. And Dave Watson, a former national champ, he may be out of it. A sellout today in Oregon, Wisconsin. We're just south of Madison, Wisconsin, that city among many Madisons in the country, named after a 4th president of the United States. Stock car racing has always had a great tradition in Wisconsin, going back to the Alan Kowickis and the Tom Refners, the Blue Knight, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. Dick Trickle commented about how many victories he's had in the state. Pat Schauer, after whom the Rookie of the Year award is named in the American Speed Association, was a native actually of this area. And when Dave Watson won his championship back in '77, matching the number on his car in 1994, he was from Milton, Wisconsin, and he had a day named after him by the governor, if memory serves me correctly. Went to the victory banquet that year in the state of Wisconsin.
Dave Day.
The day, yeah, the Dave Day. Now, here is Richie Bickle. Interesting story.
Rich Bickle was runner-up and Rookie of the Year.
From
Edgerton, Wisconsin. That's right. Started 35th, and what's amazing about the fact that he's come all the way to 6th or 7th position at this juncture in the race is the fact that he had absolutely no practice laps in that car whatsoever, and this is the first time that he's even started an ASA event this year. Now, he has sustained apparently a bit of right front body damage to car number 76, but Gordy Brunette, a youngster from Wisconsin who also got Dick Trickle's car ready for today, was in this machine and tried to qualify it for the race. There's Mike Eddy, and that's not the way you want to end a race when there's still 118 laps to go to the checker.
He came in 160 points in round numbers behind Johnny Benson Jr., and he will drop back considerably with just 2 races to go. And with just 2 races to go, and now a 160-point difference, will be closer to 200 at least, maybe as many as 250. Mathematically, Rob, he is not out of the points, but essentially, I think Mike Eddy has just been eliminated from the 1993 championship. I don't think he can make up this ground.
I don't either. We talked about brakes being a factor. Mike Eddy apparently a failed brake master cylinder as we get ready to rejoin this race under green.
23 cars will fire off on the lead lap as we begin lap number 84. It is now Hansen and Benson, 2 drivers who have won a lot this year. They've won 7 races between the 2 of them. Mentioned we've had 9 different winners, but the 2 of them have been the biggest by far. And look at this traffic jam heading into the corner number 1.
Joe Scheer gets caught on the outside. Rich Bickle goes to the low side, brings Jay Sauter with him, and of all the lead lap automobiles that have made pit stops, Sauter is the foremost of them. He is on fresher tires and is running extremely well down on the bottom.
There goes Sauter, the black number 36 is Joe Scheer. He won on the super fast Milwaukee Mile earlier this year on an ASA televised race. There's Gary St. Amant back up to full song, hoodless, but at least 2 laps down, maybe as many as 3. Kent Stoffer in that blue and white red numeral number 90. And Todd Forbes is really looking for shelter. This time he loses control nearly on the outside of corner number 4. Now he finds himself on that outside lane, and the train is moving by underneath.
Actually, Todd Forbes, Larry, just dropped off the racetrack down in turn number 2. There he is in that Noah Yoder Thunderbird, the winner of our most recent televised race just 2 weeks ago. His afternoon is at a conclusion, and a surprising high rate of attrition already, with Randy McDonald crashing and a couple of other cars, including Mike Eddy, out of this race early.
Look at this pack of snarling ASA 9-to-1 compression V6s. Big story there. The 9-to-1 compression engine is not only the engine of the future in stock car racing, but it's the engine of the history, the recent history of ASA. That's Carl Miscotton Jr. and that number 95. He's a late season replacement driver for Jim Cooper. The team was a little unhappy with the performance that they had. They thought, well, maybe a driver change would make a difference. Only time will tell. Ralph has moved down into the Noah Yoder pit. Maybe he can update us on the Todd Forbes situation, winner television race ago.
Just lost the motor, Larry. It's as simple as that. The motor just gave up the day.
And that's something that team has not had to worry about all year long. They're the only team to utilize the PowerTech engines, PowerTech down south, and he has been strong all year long. It may even be the same engine that he's used all year.
Now look at Bickle's bodywork. Remember, this is fiberglass in the American Speed Association, but it appears as though Bickle is maybe about 50 laps away or less from the whole right side simply being ripped off. It was torn off of its mountings by an earlier contact with other cars, and it keeps getting worse as the laps go on. Bickle runs competitively deep inside the top 10.
Rich has stayed out on the racetrack during all of these caution periods, has yet to come on pit road, and as a result, Larry, he has worked his way up to 6th, but now begins to lose positions as the top 7 or 8 have pulled away from car number 76. Look at him slide in turn 1. He needs to stop.
Look at Stauffer. He finds room between Raines and the number 95 of Miscotton Jr., the number 76 of Bickle, and Stauffer leads. Look at that pack of cars behind him. Looks like the start of a race.
And Kent Stauffer has come from 28th at the start to 7th. He said he was prepared to win a race this season. In his career, he has not accomplished that. Over 200 starts, and he looks strong.
It's like the introduction of an entire football team at the start of a major gridiron contest in a major stadium. They're all rushing to get to the same little hoop at the same time. Those hoops are corners 1 and corner 3.
And if you're wondering why we're watching all these cars running in a cluster, it's because Scott Hansen has checked out and Johnny Benson is all by himself in second. Nothing to see up front.
Without question, this is the greatest action on the track. You can see there must be at least 20 cars in this pack. No one is giving much ground. No one is gaining much ground, and they're all trying to find just the right little combination. It's so difficult to maintain a line right at the bottom of this track because the corners are so abrupt. They're banked. We mentioned about that strange little aspect of them about 2/3 of the way around. It's really difficult to set up a momentum or to set up a rhythm and pass a bunch of cars.
Just took a peek at Butch Miller's pole-sitting car number 50. He has made a pit stop, and he's threading his way through traffic.
Glenn Allen Jr. in the red and white number 15. Dennis Lampman, the orange number 9. That's Brad Loney from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in the number 33. Rick Berry, of course, the honorary crew chief of that car this afternoon. Yes, the same Rick Berry as in the NBA Hall of Fame, foul shots and all that sort of stuff. The halfway mark is coming up this time, and the wins challenge is going to go apparently to the man in white in the Wisconsin Aviation Chevrolet Lumina, and the winner of this week's Wins Halfway Challenge is Scott Hansen. He wins $500 from Wins for leading this race at the halfway point, and even though we've had a couple of yellow flags, you're right, you called this a sprint at the top of the show, and it has really become that because I can't believe we're that far already.
Just past the halfway mark. Remember, Scott has not yet made a pit stop. He will have to come on pit road. A lot of the other drivers have. Ralph Shaheen, what's the strategy for Scott?
Scott has come in and changed only right side tires. He needs to get left side tires, and they plan on doing so. They plan on bringing him somewhere between lap 100, we're already to 102, and probably lap 125 or so. Basically, the next time there's a caution flag, Scott Hansen is coming in. He will then be finished for the day. Johnny Benson Jr. in car number 21 has not visited pit lane yet. He is definitely going to need tires, at least right side tires, and fuel. Crew Chief Chris Bradley says they're going to try to change just those right side tires and go the distance from there. Steve Holzhausen in car number 78 is planning on doing the same thing, Larry. He has not visited pit lane yet. He's going to try to come in, just take those right side tires, gas, and continue. The driver in the catbird seat right now seems to be Butch Miller in car number 50. He has completed all of his pit stops. He is fueled up. He has fresh right sides and fresh left side tires. And as you've noted, he is moving through the pack right now, sitting behind Jeff Neal.
At the halfway point, it was Scott Hansen, the race leader. Hansen began today's race in third. Fastest qualifier, Butch Miller, right there on your screen. Ralph was making reference to him, which may be in a very good position. Let's see as pit stops unfold here. The mid-race recap of today's Madison 200 at the Madison International Speedway. Leader was Hansen. There had been 3 lead changes among 3 drivers. Incidentally, Butch Miller was certainly one of the other prominent leaders of this race. We had had a total of 6 caution flags for 42 laps. In a brief recap, it's Hansen in the lead. Second is Benson. He's about a straightaway behind. Third is Holzhausen. Fourth, Harold Fair. Fifth, Jay Sauter. Sixth, Mike Miller. That's unofficial, but I believe he's still in the lead lap. Seventh is Stauffer. Eighth is Joe Shear. Ninth would be the number 30. And we have a spin right there in the front stretch. It is Tony Raines as he backs very dangerously close to the pits here. I was running down the top 10. They have another spin on the high side of number 1.
The wall in turn number 4, Larry.
Lots of debris.
Benson Jr. up against the wall in the 4th turn. And Scott Hansen suddenly may be in a position to narrow that points gap. Johnny able to drive away from the wall in turn number 4, but damage appears to be significant to the left front corner of that Port City Berger machine.
And Butch Miller
very slowly onto pit road in car number 50.
Wow, what a turn of events here. 9th place, by the way, was Bickle, and 10th was Kenny Schrader before all this happened. But Butch is coasting behind the wall. That's a proverbial wall. We have no infield wall here for the driver to go behind, but that looks to be a terminal problem. I'm shocked.
Johnny Benson has come on pit road in the Berger Port City Delco Chevrolet, car number 21. They'll look at the left front of that car. Let's see if we can determine what happened, what precipitated. There's Tony Raines. He is sideways, and it almost appeared. I think there's been some liquid drop. There is the Eaton Chevrolet, the car number 6, and I think he's deposited some liquid on the racetrack as Raines' car just simply jumped out from under him. Benson was a little behind him. Let's see if we can find out what happened to Johnny Benson. He made contact with...
Anspaugh was involved in this.
Car number 30, is that 37 of Dave Anspaugh?
Yeah.
And I believe, maybe we can get another view of that, but it very definitely appeared as if car number 6, the Jim Weber machine, had something go wrong. Look how he's dropped to the bottom. There he's on the right side of the screen. Here's Benson sliding up. Tony Roper squeezing between Benson and Dave Anspaugh.
Here's Benson coming around the track now. He has made 1 stop. He will be coming around again. Our leader, Scott Hansen, is there. Ralph.
This is what he needed, Larry. He will get right side tires. He is all set and ready to go now. He is fueled up. He is set. They have decided to go with the right sides instead of changing the lefts. I guess he felt the left side tires were fine. That should be the last time we see Scott Hansen in the pit lane. Butch Miller blew out the ring gear on the number 50 Liberty Ford. That's what put him out.
Butch appeared to be headed for his best finish this year, although, I'll take that back, he had a 2nd place the 2nd race he entered. You see a very dejected Liberty Ford driver, Butch Miller, and there is the hood coming up on John Benson's car. Now, we're not anticipating that there are any engine problems there, just a lot of suspension and structural damage potentially to our points leader during this yellow flag. Lap 113 of 200 down, about 75 to go. Like with seemingly so many states in the United States of America now, this is a great sporting state. The Bears, the Packers, of course, always been important to the people who live around here. The University of Wisconsin is close by. By the way, they've had a great recruiting class in basketball. Rashid Griffin out of Chicago King High School has been landed by the folks here in Madison, Wisconsin, and they look to be very challenging for the Big Ten basketball season of 1993. And joining us is Rick Berry as we kind of lean out here. Yes, the same Rick Berry, the underhand shot, University of Miami, and the NBA basketball franchises in California. Rick, what brings you to a racetrack?
Well, actually, I'm here to watch Brad Loney race. I got to be friendly with his dad when I took my first coaching job in Cedar Rapids in the Global Basketball Association, and I got to know Brad, fine young man, and he's having a pretty good race, although he looked like he had a little problems the last time out. I don't know whether he's got engine problems or not, but he moved from 24th to 11th, and then people were passing him, so we'll see.
Well, it's a tough league, sort of like the NBA. Yeah, you can be good the first 3 quarters, but it's so important to be tough the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, you better be good in this all the time, because this is an incredible sport when it comes to the ability of the drivers. If you've never driven high speed before, and I've had the good fortune of taking some high-speed performance courses, you don't appreciate what they go through and learning the dynamics of the car and being so mentally alert. I have a lot of respect for these guys.
Very close quarters there coming out of corner number 4 between Neal, Tony Roper, and the number 90 Kent Stauffer. Also right behind them, filling the mirrors, right behind the Kenny Schrader car, the number 52 AC-Delco machine. Rick, about the athleticism of drivers. Yeah, they don't run the 100-yard dash in 10 seconds, and they can't stuff a basketball, and they certainly cannot lift their weight, dead weight, but the stamina that is required, I think, is perhaps a little greater than what most people realize.
No question. I mean, you're in a very hot automobile, dressed in hot clothes. You get some temperatures that are incredible. You lose a lot of weight during the course of a race on a hot day. But even more so, you have to be so fine-tuned and so mentally into it every moment. And your life is on the line. I mean, if I made a mistake and also it's a turnover and missed a shot.
Whistle is blown.
Yeah, these guys crash into the wall, go over the wall. I mean, I just think it's incredible what they're able to accomplish. And I have all the respect in the world for what they do. And it's just fun to come out here and see the ASA in person. Today it's been like demolition derby out here. Especially the track's causing some problems. I saw a guy run up a guy's backside on the yellow car on the caution flag.
Well, Ken Schrader has inherited the lead because he was the one driver among the leaders. I did not see him stop, Rob. I think that's why he's in the number 1 position. Neal, I think, would love to lead a lap for his sponsor, as well as picking up those 5 points.
I think he'd like to lead that lap coming up about 77 laps from right now. The last one, Jeff is really aggressive. He's moved into the 2nd position. Ken Stauffer nearly caught up in disaster a few laps ago, gave up the lead. He was running in the top position. Dennis Lampman is now in 4th, but this is the best battle for the top spot. Jeff Neal running behind the Pontiac in his 4th Thunderbird.
There is Schrader again. He is the temporary race leader, trying to make their way up through the pack, continue to be Scott Hansen, who's been probably the dominant personality in today's race. Butch Miller made a 2nd pit stop. We did not anticipate him coming in. Found out the reason for that was he was broken, and Butch Miller is out of this race. And a lot of people felt like he was in as good a position as anybody to win. Now, I used the word inherited the lead a few laps ago. Might have been a misnomer.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Tony Roper is a lap down. Look at that. He's gotten out of shape by car number 90, Kent Stauffer. Amazing that Stauffer was able to keep from spinning. That was at the head of the field. Ken Schrader just made the right move, went to the low side, and took that top spot away from Ken Stauffer. A great move by Kenny.
Now, Rick Berry, I see you watching intently. You're kind of into this race. What are you looking at?
Yeah, well, I'm really focusing a lot on what Brad's doing. Then you pick up on the leaders and see what the leaders are doing. And just as you mentioned, that little move that was made there, I mean, that's athleticism. I mean, you just can't do that. Normal people don't just do that. You have to practice and train for it. So those are the kind of moves you have to make. Plus, you get into traffic once you start getting the field and start to catch up on the rest of the people at the back end of the pack. Anything can happen there. So you always have to be alert. So it's really very demanding for these drivers and for the cars and the crew to get that car running properly.
Obviously, we've seen how demanding it is on the equipment, because this has turned out to be a race of attrition, and I don't think any of us really expected that, Rob. It's a pretty pleasant late summer, early fall afternoon, and no threat of rain. It's not particularly warm. There's no real reason for attrition.
It's almost, you turn on the TV cameras and we're going to tear up race cars. Last weekend at Minnesota State Fair, we had 23 cars on the lead lap most of the race. 15 of them finished there, and almost no attrition.
The elementary school principal comes to a stop, Dave Anspaugh, in his pit stall above corner number 4 of the quarter mile. David was not in contention for top 10 status here today. Gary St. Amant, I think I made mention to you, has made up one of the laps that he lost, but he still has a very tall mountain to climb. There is 6th position. That's Jim Weber and Leighton Reese's Eiton Chevrolet Elko Speedway car going to the inside of the...
Actually, it was Jay Sutter taking that 6th position away, and now Jeff Neal and Scott Hansen battling for the 2nd position.
James
Scott
Cameron
down low, and car number 5, Jeff Neal on the high side as they dice through turns 3 and 4.
So So Schrader may have the lead, but he has certainly not been able to pull away, and now he really has his hands full as he moves up. As he moves around corner 1 and 2, it is Scott Hansen who is moving up. Ralph?
Here's a lesson for you in race car setup, Larry, as we watch Scott Hansen trying to get to the outside now of Ken Schrader. Watch the two cars as they go into the corner. Watch how much deeper Hansen's machine goes into the corner. See him come right up on the outside? The reason is he has got a lower gear in the number 53 than does Ken Schrader. Schrader's car does not get through the middle of the corner as well as Hansen. So Schrader has trouble getting the car through that very tight middle section. That's where Hansen's making up all the ground. Watch as he dives right up behind Schrader. Eventually, they should be able to get around Schrader's car.
First 4 cars in the race. There is 5th place, trying to be decided right now between Jay Sauter in the number 1 machine. The 90 car is Ken Stauffer, and 6th is Jim Weber. That would be 5th, 6th, and 7th. Sauter has just taken over that position. We mentioned at the top of the show that Jay Sauter and Chris Weiss's number 1 machine, he has been fast enough to win several races this year. This would be the perfect one to win, this or Milwaukee, for that team.
This is wonderful. 3 wide out of turn number 4. Scott Hansen manages to hold on to 2nd position. And then it's the Fords of Jeff Neal and Dennis Lampman right behind. Remember, Lampman won his first victory just a few weeks ago, not on television, as Russ Gamester has had an engine let go down the main stretch and into turn number 1. May bring out the caution. It does not come out this time. There he is, Russ Gamester, down to the left side of the racetrack, and Hansen wants the point.
And remember, Jeff Neal, he's a lead lap car. He's right behind Dennis Lampman, the orange number 9, once a winner this year, lead lap car, and the number 1 car of Jay Sauter. So all these cars are in contention for this win, with 138 laps now down of 200.
And all of these Wisconsin race fans in the stand stood up and cheered when Scott Hansen went by Kenny Schrader on the outside. Johnny Benson, by the way, who's been in since the crash, back out on the racetrack trying to score as many points as he possibly can. Came up with a 150-point bulge over Hansen. And look at him again, 3 wide down the main stretch.
Rick, you've been in a lot of athletic contests where the home court or home field advantage and that crowd really was a factor. We see 3 Wisconsin drivers going at it for victory here relatively late in this race. It's a factor, isn't it?
Well, obviously, if you've raced on this track before, it's an advantage because you have a little more familiarity with it. However, as you well know, in racing, every day and within the course of a race, the conditions on the course on the track can change. So you always have to be prepared to make adjustments. That's why I'm saying that's another area we're talking about of how difficult it is to be a race car driver.
That is an interesting point. Why is a home football field or basketball court an advantage? Because it's still 10 feet tall and 100 yards wide. But it is.
Yeah, it's just being home and having the crowd yelling for you and stuff, and they don't really have that because they can't hear the crowd out there.
No, but as you point out, knowing the track is such a factor. And Rob, I think that's going on with Dennis Lampman right now. Dennis is having a great year, but knowledge of this track is really paying off.
And Jay Sauter goes way down to the bottom. He is hoping that Jeff Neal and Dennis Lampman will get this thing resolved shortly because he's got something for them himself. I think Jay Sauter is as fast as anybody out there on the racetrack, maybe with the exception of Scott Hansen. But back there in 5th position behind these guys who have just raced side by side now for the last 6 or 7 laps, Sauter's got no place to go.
Yes, Sauter really is in a very delicate position right now because he appears to be the fastest of those 5 cars in the screen right now, but he also senses that Scott Hansen is disappearing, and without a yellow, it might be very difficult for him to catch up on Scott because we have only 50 laps to go. 50 laps sounds like a long time, but this track, the laps go by very quick when we continue under green.
And as these guys go at it, look right into the frame, just flashing into the frame, where Jim Weber in car number 6 and the number 90 of Ken Stauffer, they have closed on those 5 cars in front of us.
Terry Wendy in the Clark Oil number 2 Lumina. He is not in contention. There's Weber getting way out of the groove there, a high side of corner number 4. Leighton Reese has got to be happy because Weber's kept that car in the top 10 all weekend in practice ball. And Stauffer dirt tracking the corner number 1, makes that hard left-handing turning. Here's that battle up front. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Wow, poetry in motion, perhaps an overworked phrase, but that's what happens when you develop a rhythm. And there's Lampman getting a little bit out of shape. He gets into the tail of Jeff Neal, almost takes Neal out. Neal gathers it back in. Sauter seemingly has an advantage. He tries to pounce on the moment. He goes underneath Lampman. He now goes underneath Neal. Thank you very much, Dennis Lampman, says Jay Sauter.
Lampman's probably one of the luckiest guy here because he's the one the 99 ran into, and he's lucky he didn't do even more damage to him because he's running with the back left end off the car.
Yeah, that's happened before, hasn't it?
Yeah, more than once.
It's a good point, though, Rick. You're right, because obviously it was a very hard hit. Trickle lost a number of laps in the pits trying to make repairs before they finally gave up.
And Jay Sauter goes to second. Ken Schrader appears to have lost the handle. He's off the pace in car number 52. The AC-Delco Pontiac gives up 2 positions in a heartbeat. And now, moving on the outside, is car number 9, Lampman.
What an interesting moment here as Jay Sauter, the home stater who has done so well in so many races, but just has not had Lady Luck smile on him, finally moves into second position. He now has Mr. Hansen in his sights. He can see the possibility of victory in his grasp. Running in third right now, behind the number 1 of Jay Sauter, is Jeff Neal in the split fire spark plugs number 5. Remember, Jeff has never won one of these AC-Delco Challenge races. So a lot emotionally involved for our drivers running in second, third as they pursue the high-flying Scott Hansen. He's looking for win number 4 of 1993. Slinger, Wisconsin Dells, Lacrosse, Road America, and the Milwaukee Mile, some of the famous racetracks that make up the 39 total here in the state of Wisconsin. That's number 10 on the list as we go yellow here at the Madison International Speedway. There's Tom Jones, and the report is that he was the reason for the yellow. He touched the wall, but obviously he gathered it back up, and Jones is back at full song. The yellow comes out. Normally that'd be a disadvantage for the race leader, but Scott Hansen was being run down by Jay Sauter anyway, so this will give Scott an opportunity perhaps to take a breath and check with the pit crew and say, hey, got any ideas how I keep this guy back? The crew probably has been watching the line, as well as Scott Hansen, that Jay has been driving him, but Jay has really been moving in on Scott Hansen. 160 laps now are down. There is Jones hitting the wall, getting in fairly solidly there, although it was a glancing blow as he exited corner number 2. We're going to break one more time here because we want to obviously bring you all of the exit laps as we get down to the end. There's a very close, interested observer of today's Madison 200.
Welcome back to Madison International Speedway in the AC-Delco Challenge Series at lap 164 as we get set to go back to green flag racing. Let's update you on 2 cars. The AC-Delco Pontiac of Ken Schrader. The motor is skipping on that entry. He is suffering some problems. He is trying to hang on, get as many points here this afternoon as he can. Back to car number 6, Jim Weber, driving that Iton entry. The car is having some problems with the distributor. They have fixed it, and he is now back into the race. Joining us, as you know, up in the booth, NBA star Rick Barry. And Rick, my question to you, there is a lot of talk in sports these days about the zone that athletes get into. There is a zone that race car drivers would get into, I would think, and I think we're probably seeing that with our 2 leaders, the 53 and the 1, Scott Hansen and Jay Sauter. From what you've seen out of race car drivers as athletes and talking to them and seeing them in the pit lane, how do you think a race car driver gets into a zone as opposed to, say, a Michael Jordan or yourself?
Well, you know, I can't speak for the drivers, not having done it myself, but I would think it's a situation where they just absolutely feel terrific physically that day. The car seems to be going ahead and doing everything they would like it to do, and the 2 of them become one. And it's like whatever they want that car to do, that car does it. And they're so sharp mentally, they're so quick to respond to things, and it's just as if it's an effortless day for them out there. It just falls all together.
We go back to green, and Scott Hansen and Jay Sauter hope that they have just switched on the zone again that they were in. Jeff Neal is definitely also a contender in today's race. Those are the first 3 cars in your screen right now. Hansen, Sauter, and Jeff Neal. And again, Neal looking for his first win this year. The number 1, Jay Sauter, also looking for his first win this year. He won once last year. And Scott Hansen trying to regain the throne that he's had several times already in 1993.
And we still have 17 cars, Larry, on the lead lap.
With 169 laps now, down about 30 to go. Rick, we want to thank you for stopping by and your support of motor racing. We enjoyed a lot when we get other sports that are involved, because for a long time motor racing was sort of out there in left field and nobody really knew whether or not it was a sport, and having you participate in it really helps that, Rich.
Well, pleasure for me. Enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the race. Thanks, guys.
And good luck to your car also.
Thank you.
Okay. And his car is Brad Loney. Rick is actually the honorary crew chief for today's race. Of course, again, Rick Barry, the man in the Hall of Fame of the NBA and still active as a coach in professional basketball.
And of course, his car that is being referred to, Brad Loney's Winnebago Flex Steel Chevrolet. And Brad continues to battle in the lead lap and at about the 8th or 9th position. The best battle, however, Larry, is that dice for 3rd position between Jeff Neal and Kenny Schrader. Now, if that car is missing, he's doing a great job of keeping it in the top 5.
Now, let's talk about the point situation. Both Mike Eddy and John Benson Jr. have not had good days. Scott Hansen, he came into today's race about 150 points behind Johnny Benson Jr. for the points lead. There was 2nd place Jay Sauter, 3rd place Jeff Neal. Sauter came in about 400 points behind the leader John Benson Jr. So he doesn't figure to be a challenger ever this season for the championship, but what he does appear to be doing is just cementing a top 4 finish. But Hansen is really in a position to gain some points today.
We're going to take a peek now at the car that has just moved into 8th position. There he is, car number 9, Dennis Lampman, in that Lampman-Schwister Ford Thunderbird. He was the only lead lap car, Larry, to stop under the most recent caution. He's come from 17th to 8th since the green has been redisplayed.
New tires, remains to be seen just exactly how long that advantage will continue, but we've seen it in all forms of stock car racing. When you bolt on those new 4 pieces of rubber donuts in the 4 corners of the car, it's a real advantage. The advantage goes away sometimes after 10 laps, sometimes after 12, sometimes after 30, and it's enough to propel you to victory.
Dennis, after winning the race earlier this year at Berlin Raceway, in over 20 races, only 2 non-Michigan-based drivers have won there. He was the second one, of course, Dennis, hailing from Wisconsin. Ralph, we're talking about the tire situation. Is there any strategy yet to be played out on pit road?
Ron, right now they're both going to stay out on the racetrack. Even if we do get a caution, nobody wants to give up track position with just some 30 or less than 30 laps to go. The other thing is that they both use the same tire strategy. They both changed right side tires only, and they did that twice. So the left side tires on both Scott Hansen and Jay Sauter's cars are the ones that they started with.
We have had 6 lead changes today. Scott Hansen took the lead on lap number 140, so he has led the last 38 laps. That gives him over 120 leading laps today. We've had 8 caution flags. There's Hansen, the leader, and Jay Sauter looking as though he is ready to challenge for first place. We'll see. The sands of that proverbial hourglass are once again sifting toward the bottom. In 3rd place on the lead lap continues to be Jeff Neal. Ken Schrader, with perhaps his finest American Speed Association performance of 1993, is 4th. These are all lead lap cars. Another picture of the youngster running in 2nd place. There is 3rd place, Jeff Neal, the split fire Thunderbird. Jeff has a lot of confidence in this team. It has been reorganized, if not physically, at least emotionally, in the latter part of this season. He's got great confidence for the rest of the year looking on to 1994. There is Ken Schrader, one of the speediest drivers in a stock car in the super speedways in America, and the number 81 car of Harold Baer. 5th place right now. He's had a very steady race. Not spectacular, no 4th of July skyrockets. And in 6th, Steve Holtzhausen, one of his finer runs of the 1993 season, last year's Rookie of the Year. In 7th position, right behind Holtzhausen, is the number 84 of Bob Seneker, the Lane Automotive Johnsonville sausage car. He's 7th. Normally he runs higher. In 8th is Dennis Lampman. There he is. There's the man who has moved up since that pit stop, the Porta-John Schwister Ford, number 9 of Dennis Lampman. In 9th and 10th are Kent Stauffer and Brad Loney, and those are the only cars on the lead lap. Everybody else has had problems, or they ended up being lapped. There's Stauffer.
Actually, we do have other cars on the lead lap, but those are the top 10. Kent Stauffer runs in the 9th position in car number 90. There is now the 10th place car, as Mike Miller has gotten around Brad Loney. Mike Miller runs in 10th position in that blue and yellow JB Car Care Products Gilland Chevrolet. There is the 11th place car, the Winnebago Flex Steel Chevrolet of Brad Loney. Brad needs fresh tires. He was running as high as 6th just a few laps ago. He's dropped back to 11th. In 12th position, well, they're going to settle it here shortly. It's 2 cars running side by side. Rich Bickle in car number 76 and the 70 machine of Jay Summers. They're battling for 12th and 13th. Behind them, Tony Raines and Gary St. Amant at 25 and 7. They are 1 lap down. Also on the lead lap, Joe Shear, Glenn Allen Jr., and Ken Lund.
So there are 17 cars. Tom Jones is being shown on the lead lap, but that was before his smash to the corner 2 wall. I assume he lost the lap, but we don't have any official confirmation. Really down to
Jay Summers is sideways and spinning in turn number 2. Summers battling for position. He was after that 11th spot. He is off the racetrack, or not quite off the racetrack, but down out of the racing groove. Jay was having a great afternoon in that car number 70, the AutoSite Racing Chevrolet, but it looks like his shot at a top 10 finish has just evaporated.
This 200-lap dash is about to become a 10-lap dash. We're at lap 187 officially. Now there's Summers. He's in that bright red car on the outside entering corner number 1.
Slips up out of the racing groove. It looked like he actually had the advantage over Bickle's car number 76, but got just a bit out of shape. Slides up into where those little pieces of rubber off the tires have rolled up, and you get no traction up on that high side of the racetrack at all. Fortunately for Jay, when he came back down across the racetrack, nobody in the immediate vicinity. Here's it is from another angle, just simply out of the racing groove, and he had the pass made.
Yes, he did. It's not a dirt track, but what happens on any pavement track as you get to the end of the race, a cushion of sorts does build up, but unlike a dirt track, you can't use the cushion on a paved racetrack. When you get up there, as Rob just mentioned, you get into those marbles, and it's like literally driving on that. You have absolutely no control. Ralph?
Joining me, Larry, is Jim Sauter, Jay's father, and a star driver himself. Now, you were just talking with Mike Chaffee, Jay's crew chief. What are you telling him? What are you saying to Jay to do?
Well, I just told him to watch what Hansen does to you on a restart. He slowed him down pretty good on the last restart. I just wanted him to be ready for that. Try a little different tactic. Both those cars are running real well. They're pretty well matched. Hansen's going to be tough to beat because he's a pretty good fox, good racer. So I just want Jay to be prepared.
How do you defend against that then?
Well, if it was me, I'd lay back just a little bit and be ready to give a little quicker restart because Hansen slowed him down an awful lot. Probably has a little bit different gear ratio and can pull and make a good jump start, so Jay needs to defend against that.
Now we'll see if Jay listens to his fatherly advice.
So, Larry, what makes him the expert?
Yeah, well, what makes him the expert is that in 1984, he was not only the pole setter, but the winner of the first ever American Speed Association race at this racetrack. That was July 28th. It's a 5-lap shootout at the OR Corral. OR is in Oregon, Wisconsin. There's first, second place. Jay Sauter seemingly at a disadvantage under the yellows, but as we continue green flag laps, he moves in. But does he have enough time? 4 laps to go now. 4 laps until victory. 196 laps have been completed. And we have a crash in corner number 2. Nearly a crash. 2 cars coming together. Harold Fair is one of them. Is that Harold?
It is Harold
and Bob Seneca. And Fair, of course, was a top 5 car. Now, we will finish these races, or this race, under green. Rob, the explanation from the ASA viewpoint.
Well, we've got a rule in ASA that I think fans love, and that is the fact we never finish a race under the caution flag. The last 5 must be run under green. We had completed lap number 196. It was run under green, so the next 4 will have to be contested under green. Battling for position, it was Harold Fair and Bob Seneca. It looks like it was Fair's machine that got tapped twice by Bob Seneca.
Yeah, and then Fair went down into the grass and then slid right up in front of Bob Seneca. And in case you're wondering, no, he didn't have control of that. I mean, it was a payback, but it was not intentional. And I don't think that the first hit was also intentional. They were just you know, hard at it for positions, and they went into corner number 1. And I mentioned a number of times how tricky the turns are here, and Bob just cooked it in there really hard. Tapped Harold in the back. It's unfortunate because a couple of neighbors, friends, longtime ASA veterans, and they were just racing for 5th.
And it seems as if, Larry, that this caution flag plays right into the hands of Scott Hansen. He seems to be able to get better restarts than does Jay Sauter, and it seems to take Jay 3 or 4 laps before he's up to the tempo set by the front runner Hansen. He may have to use yet a different strategy than that suggested by his dad. He's got to pull the proverbial, I think, rabbit out of a hat. And look at the conference going on between his crew chief and his dad, Jim. It's kind of a co-crew chief situation, I think.
A lot to talk now. There have been 2 restarts inside the last 15 laps or so, and on each of them, Hansen, he's gotten the advantage over Jay Sauter. So Jay has seen 2 different approaches at restarting from Hansen. Hansen was paying close attention to Jay last time. Jay was holding back, and so Hansen wouldn't let him drift too far away. He slowed down and closed that distance up by going slower, and that took the potential advantage away from Jay. What do you think, Ralph? Does this young man have any alternatives?
Well, he's got a problem here, Larry, and it's working to Hansen's advantage. When Hansen slows him down like that on the restarts, the motor bogs down on Jay, and he has a hard time getting the engine to come to full song right away, especially when he nails the throttle that initial go. So it takes that motor half a second to blow it out and get up to speed, but by then, Hansen's gone.
Well, the conference continues as the pace car ducks to the infield. We are now just 4 laps away from checkered flag. Hansen slows the cars down significantly. A very slow restart. Scott Hansen is obviously aware of Jay's problem. Jay seems to get a little better start this time, but does he have enough time to catch and then pass Scott Hansen? Better start for Jay.
Great run by Sauter on that restart, but he's got to now not only catch Scott Hansen, but get by a seemingly impossible task with just 3 laps to go.
It just does not seem like there's enough time. Neal continues to run in 3rd. Kenny Schrader is 4th. Steve Holtzhausen is 5th. Mike Miller is 6th. 7th is Dennis Lantland. 8th is Brad Loney. 9th is Richie Bickle, and in 10th position is unofficially Tony Raines, coming up on lap number 198.
Tony, in fact, is a lap down. Ken Stauffer is 10th, 11th Joe Shear, 12th Glenn Allen Jr., and 13th Ken Lund.
And there's Hansen stretching out the advantage one more time. The car doesn't appear to be handling quite as well as the Chris Weiss entry, but lots of horsepower underneath that hood, and he really gets an advantage going down the straightaways. White flag up. The last opportunity for Jay Sauter to try and get a whiff of Scott Hansen's exhaust, but it doesn't look like the young driver from Wisconsin is going to have time. But the veteran Wisconsin driver, Scott Hansen, looking to pick up win number 4. This will tie him with John Benson. He takes a big step toward his efforts to win the 1993 championship by winning the Madison International Speedway 200.
Ken Schrader's 4th place finish, a career best in his ASA runs. A great ride, apparently nursing a slightly ailing race car to the checkered flag. Jay Sauter moves alongside to congratulate. And interesting enough, Larry, you say that Hansen is the veteran. Maybe he's been racing a few more years, but in fact, Jay Sauter has been around ASA a lot longer than has Hansen.
Very interesting point. You're right. The age difference is the reference to the veteran aspect of that relationship. But yeah, Jay has logged a lot of miles in his young career. Jeff Neal, he has to be very happy. And you know what? Jeff Neal has again duplicated his best ever career finish. That is what, his third place finish this year alone.
Now, Jeff finished 3rd in Calgary in the Players 500, 3rd in the Michigan 300, just a couple of spots short of that coveted first victory.
So Scott Hansen enjoying at least the initial spoils of victory in victory lane, and one of those spoils is Ralph Shaheen.
Well, you can hear the crowd cheering in the background. Congratulations, Scott Hansen, on your win here this afternoon as he puts the car in park mode. Let's talk about these restarts. What were you doing to keep Jay behind you? How'd you do that?
Well, I had to jump the start all the time. You know, I didn't have any brakes left in the car. I used them up real early in the race, and going around Kenny Schrader, even though he gave me a lot of room, I used up the brakes. So I had to do a lot of blocking there for Jay. He had a good car. They did a great job, but got to thank the all-star team. Cat's Pride, Chevy Lumina, we just did a good job here today.
Seemed like you had the right pace as the green flag would come off. You would slow him down a little bit and then get him going. How do you judge how slow to make him?
Well, I didn't try to do that. You know, Rusty Wallace got to stop and go for that last night. I just tried to stay in third gear and then really jump on the gas hard. What it was, I think he was trying to take a run at me, and I just wouldn't let him do it. I let him close up, and then I took off when he got there.
Now you're even thicker in the midst of this points chase with Toledo and Jennerstown yet to go, and you're a streaky guy. We saw that at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year. How do we do it now? What do you do with 2 races to go?
Keep winning races, keep leading laps. That's what I said in the beginning. If we're going to win the championship, we're going to do it by winning races. And, you know, again, I just got to thank everybody. Great turnout here at Madison today. You know, this is like a second home for me. You know, television, TNT, you know, just everybody's been real good to the whole series this year, and I got to thank everybody for being here.
Larry, if he's going to start one more streak, now is the time to do it.
Absolutely. And what a great comeback it is for Scott Hansen. He had a miserable start to the season. He was puzzled. He just couldn't figure out how to make these new cars for him go well. Well, he's figured it out. One of the campaigns that the American Speed Association in Group 5 has recently aligned itself with is the campaign to use seat belts, reminding everyone to just buckle up. Jay Sauter, our second place finisher today, he buckled up to his best career finish, scratch that, best finish of 1993. He's down in victory lane. We'll be talking to him in just a second. There are the unofficial finish of order. There is the unofficial finish today. Neil was third. Ken Schrader, his finest ASA appearance and performance of this season, and Steve Holtzhausen finishes fifth. 6th through 10th was Dennis Lampman with those new tires. He was able to bring himself back up to 6th, but not up to a position to challenge for victory. Then Mike Miller, Brad Loney, Richie Bickle Jr. That bodywork never did fly off the car. It stayed on all race long, but it flapped. And in 10th place was Kent Stauffer, the Ohio driver in the Ford, in car number 90.
Joe Shear credited with 11th place. We didn't talk about him much today because he languished in the middle of the pack much of the afternoon, as did Glenn Allen Jr. in car number 15, finishing 12th. 13th, Ken Lund had a good run, the local driver, and he's one of a handful that's got another 200 laps to go this afternoon. Harold Fair and Bob Seneca 14th and 15th after tangling just 4 laps from the checkered flag.
Tough break for them because they had a shot, both of them, at top 5.
These drivers at least 1 lap down. Tony Raines, the first driver, 1 lap off the winner's pace. He finishes 16th. Joe Knott, that 6th place starter, comes home 17th. Carl Miscotton Jr. finishes in 18th position, or rather the 3rd, I guess it is. Jay Summers, 19th and 20th position to car number 2, Terry Wendy. Rounding out the top 25, Tony Roper, Gary St. Amant, who battled uphill all day. Johnny Benson Jr. finishes 23rd, and hopefully before we go off the air, Larry, we can give you an update on points. No doubt Hansen will close dramatically. Jim Weber and Russ Gamester rounding out the top 25.
And nothing really happening with the rookie battle. Remember that Randy McDonald dropped out early in the race. Russ Gamester was still on the track at that time. It looked like he was going to have an opportunity to move in on Randy, but he too had just a miserable day. As a matter of fact, it was a long day for the Wins cars, as all 3 of them struggled. Gary Samon again was the fastest, but Russ Gamester, for a moment it looked like he had a chance to get closer to McDonald, but not going to happen. Ralph?
Larry, those restarts seem to make the difference. Describe it from your view. Not able to get them after you started.
The restarts, my car was a little slow for 2 laps, and I just didn't need the yellow at the end. You know, the Casey Motorsports Delco Voyage crew, they did an excellent job. They got us in and out of the pads fast, and you know, with a few more laps, maybe we could have got them.
The car done to get it up to the front of the field.
Well, you know, the crew worked hard. Qualified Minnesota, we came out and qualified 7th here because we spent more time on the race setup, and that proved to be the key later on in the race.
We're still trying to get you into victory lane here with 2 races yet to go. How does Jennerstown and Toledo shape up for you and this team?
Very good. We really like going to Toledo. It's a fast half mile, and we're looking forward. We got a real good chance, and if any team can do it, we can get her done.
Jay Sauter, who came into today's race, ranked 4th among the top 10 finishers of 1993. That means he's the 4th highest driver in terms of number of top 10 finishes. 3rd in laps led and 7th in possible laps completed. He helped that number today. We'll be back with still more. unofficial update for you on the season-long point standings. Scott Hansen came in about 150 points behind Benson. He outpointed Benson by approximately 100 today, which means that he is within 50 points of the season-long points lead that Johnny Benson Jr.'s had all season long. The crowd is staying here because, as we mentioned, they're having a local race, and big favorites. Stock car racing is really big in Wisconsin. It has been since the end of World War II. Coming up, 2 more races on the American Speed Association AC-Delco schedule. Just 2 races for Scott Hansen to make up 50 points on John Benson Jr., or the miracle of miracles, Mike Eddy, to come from more than 200 behind. Toledo, Ohio, 1 p.m. That's the Toledo 400 on the 3rd of October, and the Jennerstown 400 on the 17th of October in Jennerstown, Pennsylvania. That's along where else? Interstate 70. About 50 miles east of Pittsburgh.
And these were the 2 tracks where the championship was decided last year. Speaking of championships, the season-ending special will be seen December 5th, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Nashville Network right here. It will be a 90-minute special this time around, so make sure you mark it on your calendars. December the 5th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 90 minutes worth of championship special.
Well, the number 3 was supposed to be a fixation for Brad Loney today. They had a fortune cookie the night before. The hotel room had 3s in it, but the number 3, once again, was a good omen, Ralph, for Jeff Neal.
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at that, Larry. Jeff is getting a little tired of finishing in 3rd, but you had a good run to get to this 3rd. How did you make it happen today?
Well, it was hard work. We made a poor gear selection for the race today. The hot temperature really slowed the racetrack down, and I didn't have enough RPM to get off the corner. The only way I could run with the boys is if I had a long green. Towards the end there, I was catching Jay and Scott. You know, I didn't need those cautions, and Kenny Schrader sure did run me hard. And I got to tell you what, I'd like to thank Split Fire Spark Plugs, a great sponsor, Don Finetti. I'd like to say hello to my little daughter, Alex, at home.
You know what, Larry? I think he's tired of those 3s. It's the number 1 that he'd like to find before the year wraps up.
He sure would, Ralph. 6th through 13th separated by 120 points. Jeff came in ranked 10th in the points. His finish today is likely to move him a little higher. Still more to come from Madison. Scott Hansen, the winner here at the Madison International Speedway. This telecast is a copyrighted production of Group 5 Sports, a division of Group 5 Sales Incorporated. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission of this telecast without the written consent of Group 5 Sports is prohibited. There is the winning mount out of the Badger State of Wisconsin, home state win.
The old guard dies hard. Mike Eddy has been hanging tough all season, but he now virtually mathematically eliminated unless Scott Hansen and Johnny Benson simply don't show up for the next 2 races. Hansen is close to within 37, and look at Jay Sauter. Still not out of reach, is 3rd in the standings. The new guard has arrived on the podium.
Tony Raines attempting to solidify his 5th ranking, and that scramble still continues between Glenn Allen, Randy McDonald, St. Amant, Lampman, Neal, Fair, Stauffer, Seneca. Who among them will be able to come home in 6th, or maybe will they be able to be 5th?
Cannot wait till the next race, the Toledo 400, the annual Fall Classic on the High Bank Half Mile, and then again we'll settle it all at Jennerstown. Could it be any closer than it was in '92?
Another primary has been decided in the 1993 AC-Delco Series Championship campaign. Now, the winner in the Wisconsin primaries was Scott Hansen. It's a home state victory for this man. The final returns on this election will be in by November. Stay with us. Who will be elected? It's still a 3-person race every step of the way. You have been watching live ASA Racing on the AC-Delco Series from the Madison International Speedway in Madison, Wisconsin. This has been a Group 5 sports production. Larry Newber, Rob Albright, Ralph Shaheen. And until the next time, we'll see you at the races.